So we know how important that protein can be for building muscle and for burning fat. In particular, if you're in a calorie deficit, you're looking to burn excess body fat, then protein is going to be your secret sauce, because when you're in a calorie deficit, the biggest problem that people tend to find is that they are hungry a lot of the time. There's two ways we can attack this situation. Number one, by being mindful of the type of food that you're eating, high volume foods, foods that keep you full. And number two, being mindful of your total protein intake. Protein is, out of the three different major components of food, fat, carbohydrates and protein is the one that helps you feel fullest. So eating foods that are high in protein are not only going to have the impact of helping you feel full, they're also going to help you build a little bit of extra muscle and therefore burn a little bit of extra body fat. The main way that I think you can be mindful of your protein is to plan ahead. Try to include it as a major component in every single meal, including breakfast, including any snacks. So some popular items that you could include in your breakfast might be porridge, Greek yogurt, bacon medallions, that kind of thing. When it comes to dinners, you've got things like salmon, cottage cheese, chicken, turkey, tuna. When it comes to your evening meals or your tea, you can include things like steak, lentils, tofu, mince, etc. And when it comes to snacks, things like nuts, things like cheese, roasted chickpeas, for example. So food that is classified as high in protein, to me, means lots of protein, but not that many calories per gram of protein. So for example, steak, loads of protein per amount of calories. Yeah, not many calories for lots of protein. Things like peanut butter, you can eat enough peanut butter to get lots of protein in, except there's loads of calories in it as well. So it's not really of any use. What you want is foods that are relatively low in calories and foods that are relatively high in protein. Obviously, protein bars and protein shakes can be a great way to add in extra protein without that many extra calories, but be mindful of marketing, because a lot of foods that are labeled as high protein aren't necessarily. This is particularly prevalent in popular brands having a protein version of their favorite chocolate bar. For example, Snickers chocolate bars, Mars chocolate bars, etc. There's protein versions of those things. They have almost no extra protein in them. So they are not very good examples of how to get extra protein into your diet. When it comes to protein shakes, what my advice would be is to buy powdered whey protein, flavored ideally, and then mix it with milk yourself. It takes almost no time, and it's way cheaper than way cheaper, no pun intended, than buying pre-mixed shakes. Much cheaper, so easy to do. That's my advice. As I mentioned before, one of the major problems when looking to drop excess body fat in particular is hunger. So you want to include lots of food in your diet that are high in volume but low in calories. So the classic example would be McDonald's food, is delicious. In some of their food is absolutely delicious, and we all know that when you eat it, you may well feel full at the time, but an hour later you're not going to be. You're going to be hungry again. That's no good, because whilst it's fine once in a while, if you do that often, you're constantly going to be eating lots of calories and then feeling hungry not that long later. Whereas the other way around, if you're eating food that is high in volume but relatively low in calories, then you're going to have the opposite effect. You're going to feel fuller for longer, therefore much more able to stick to a calorie deficit. So I'll put up on the screen now two similar diets for the day. One stacked full of high protein and high volume foods, and one just, on the go foods that you wouldn't have to think too much about, that may well have some protein in, but don't give you much bang for your buck in terms of much protein per calorie. So as you can see on the high protein side, your breakfast would be porridge with blueberries, honey, and an added scoop of vanilla protein for flavour. Then at around about 11 o'clock, you would have a little snack. So you might have a handful of nuts, in this case I've written almonds, and one Babybel. Then for your dinner, you would have one baked potato with tuna and, a handful of salad in there, and, a diet drink of your choice. In this case, I've put Pepsi Max. For your tea, steak and homemade chips. So again, making your chips from potatoes yourself can save you a lot of calories. Some peas and some peppercorn sauce in there. And then for dessert, a big bowl of Greek yogurt. There is a 0% fat version, which I've gone with, topped with a crushed chocolate bar of your choice, like a twirl or a flake, something like that, and a little bit of caramel sauce, plus a couple of cups of tea throughout the day with milk, no sugar. That adds up to around about 2,000 calories, and it's around about 120 grams of protein. So quite a lot of protein, probably more than your target for the day, with just 2,000 calories. And as you can see on the opposite side there, option 2 would be a standard breakfast. So something that you're not necessarily being mindful of, not necessarily thinking about your protein intake. 2 slices of toast with peanut butter at 11 o'clock. You might have a breakfast bar. Then for your dinner, you'll probably have some kind of meal deal sandwich with a bag of crisps and a bar of chocolate, again with Pepsi Max. For your tea, half a pizza and frozen chips with some peas, and then for dessert, a cornetto. Doesn't seem like much more food, and it isn't much more food. In actual fact, you could probably argue that it's less food, but it's 300 calories more and just over half the amount of protein, just 75 grams of protein. So as you can see in this particular day, a lot more calories in the second version with a lot less protein. If you're mindful of your choices ahead of time, if you plan ahead a little bit, you can actually make smarter choices around protein, which will then keep you fuller for longer, and that's the key. And as we've said, a calorie deficit of just 300 calories a day might not seem like an awful lot, because if you were to stick to that on average every single day, it would take you almost 2 weeks just to lose a pound. And you might think, that's hardly worth the effort, having to think about my food, having to think about my protein, having to work out more, etc., to just lose 1 pound in almost 2 weeks. 1 pound over 2 weeks is a stone in 6 months. Now remember, there's no such thing as bad food. I mentioned McDonald's earlier, and it's delicious, and it's absolutely fine to include that in your meal plan, in your meals for the day, in your meals for the week. It's very important to have what you would consider treats. The key to maintaining a calorie deficit for a fairly long period of time, or indeed being mindful of your food choices for the long term, is to build in things that you enjoy eating, to build your diet around things you like, things that aren't going to be too much of a challenge for you. Remember, consistency beats intensity. It's not a case of sticking to just salads and good foods all of the time. That's not how it works. An 80-20 rule is around about right. Make smart choices most of the time, and then treat yourself every now and again. Ideally, if you can find some things that you consider treats that aren't outrageously high in calories, for example, fruit in jelly, tastes delicious, nice part of a dessert, low calorie ice cream, it's not as bad as it sounds. Those types of things that aren't high in calories, but you see as a treat, is going to be a key. And being mindful of easy wins. So things like, if you like to drink pop, cans of pop, bottles of pop, whatever, Pepsi Max versus Pepsi, Coke Zero versus Coke, those types of things are an easy win in terms of reducing your overall calories without really changing your habits, without really changing what you're having. Things like bacon medallions versus regular bacon rashers, they might not taste quite as nice, but they are a big difference in terms of calories. I mentioned homemade chips earlier. Those kinds of things, easy wins, 50 calories here and there that you can save are going to help you maintain that deficit, or when in the future you're at your ideal body fat percentage, then they can help you maintain that physique for the long term. All in all, don't be too hard on yourself. Everybody slips up, everybody ends up going over their calories for the day every once in a while. That's absolutely fine. The key is that you consistently, i.e. most of the time, stick to the plan. If you stick to the plan most of the time, then the times that you don't matter so much. Hope that all makes sense. If you do have any questions, then by all means reach out. But until next time, take it easy.